everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. I'm Stephen Cabral, board-certified naturopathic doctor, and we are about to get started with our Weight Loss and Wellness Wednesday. We're going to share with you the 10 things that will make you sick, fat, and depressed. I know those are three really intense things that many people deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I certainly am not making light of that at all. But what I want you to know is there's always a reason why. There's always a reason why we become unwell, we become diseased, and there's always a reason why we gain weight or we have difficulty losing the weight, and there's certainly a reason why we become anxious, depressed, or overwhelmed and irritable. There's always a reason why, and we know that there's something wrong within our biochemistry. Maybe it's gut-based, maybe it's vitamin-based, maybe it's toxicity-based, but there's something going on within our body. It's not just inflammation, it's the things that lead to that inflammation that's causing us to become unwell. And we're going to explore 10 of those things today. I think 10 things that all of us should be working on, even if we don't need to lose the weight, even if we're feeling pretty well and that we're not depressed, that we're happy overall. These are things that I certainly look at myself on a day-to-day basis. And the reason I say that is that even though I'm well now and I feel better than I ever have in my entire life, I want to stay that way. And the only way that you get to stay that way is by doing the things that got you there in the first place. And maybe they're unknown for a lot of people, but once you have them written down and once you know about them, you hear about them, you're able to better follow that protocol. So let's talk about those 10 things right now. I think they're pretty straightforward. I think that you're probably already doing, let's say, about half of them. But the other half, well, those are things that you need to take your game to that next level to get, no matter how great you're doing right now or how poor, you're able to do better. That's what it's all about. And that's how I feel myself as well. I just had my own labs run last week. I ran all of my hormones again. I ran another food sensitivity test, and I ran my annual blood work. And I always do that. I'm always exploring my biochemistry because I know on the outside I'm feeling great. I'm feeling really good. But I want to make sure that my internal chemistry is showing the same exact thing. And these are all the same tests that you have at your access and disposal for the whole family as well, meaning that everything I talk about on the Cabral Concept, you could purchase right online. You can go work with a functional medicine doctor, however you want to do it. You have access to looking at your internal biochemistry. All right, I could talk about this all day, but let's get started with our big 10 right here, the 10 things that are causing you to become sick, fat, or depressed, and everything in between there. All right, so the first one is eating too fast. A lot of people out there right now, they have bloating, they have gas, they have stomach-based issues, maybe some acid reflux. What happens is if you eat too fast, you're not chewing your food well enough. And if you don't chew your food well enough, what happens is it stays in your stomach longer. You need more stomach acid, you need more churning, you need more enzymes, and then you need more bile as that food moves through your stomach into your intestines. So that's very, very important. The other thing is it can lead to bacterial overgrowth in your gut as well. It can lead to candida overgrowth as well from the fermentation-based process. Putrefaction of the proteins especially, that's a big, big thing because those proteins are typically the hardest to break down. Sure, leaves, from your salad is hard to break down, but I would say even more so are a lot of these proteins that if we don't chew well enough, like meat, really are difficult to break down. And you can listen to my previous podcast on this called Using the Fork Method or the Fork Test. Check that out. Just type in fork test into the stephencabral.com/podcast page, and you'll be able to check that show out. That was one of my favorites. We actually did that twice. It was a bonus show that we listed because so many people found that helpful. And it's something that I talk about with every single private wellness client that I work with, whether it's in person or over Skype. So eating too fast is a big one, but also in terms of that's in terms of like sickness, but in terms of weight gain, it's just as important because what happens is if you finish your meal within like 5 minutes, you're going to still be hungry. Your body needs the signals coming from your gut to your brain saying, okay, we ate enough. We're satiated. The stomach's stretched a little bit. We need time for that to happen. You can't just swallow your food like a seagull. That I use that analogy so often growing up in Maine, or I should say going to weekends a lot when I was growing up in Maine. We used to feed the seagulls. Now, I'm not sure if that's good or not, but what we would do is we would just see them literally engulf the food and swallow everything whole, bones, anything. It was amazing. But, if you do that as a human, you're going to feel the effects, and also you're not going to get those satiation-based based vibes. All right, so number 2 is using too large of a plate. And this kind of goes along with number 1, just as important. I wrote about this. It has to be close to 12 or 13 years now when my first book came out on nutrition and weight loss and all body transformation. And I talked about the difference between a 12-inch plate and a 9-inch plate is astounding in terms of losing weight. The studies have been repeated multiple times now. When you put the same amount of food on a 12-inch plate and the same amount of food on a 9-inch plate, except that the 9-inch plate is completely filled to the sides and the 12-inch plate is only filled about 3/4 of the space, your mind thinks you didn't eat enough when it's eating just the 9 inches worth of food on the 12-inch plate. But if you eat all the 9 inches of food on that 9-inch plate, it says, whoa, I ate enough. The whole plate was full. It's amazing what it can do, really, and honestly, in terms of psychology, because a big part of our nutrition is also psychological. It's not eating while stressed. It's not being overwhelmed or holding that tightness in your chest. It's not any one of those things. So you have to use these little psychological tricks to your advantage. So go down on the plate. Always say to yourself, after I eat slowly, I chew my food, I put my fork down between bites, any one of those things while I'm chewing, then I can always go back for more. Okay, so start with less food. You can always go back for more. All right. Now, next up is when you're drinking beverages with calories, you're most likely feeding bad gut bacteria or yeast. You are going to weaken the adrenals, potentially weaken the thyroid. You're going to mess with the highs and lows in blood sugar, which also affects your mood. So this is really important. I think a lot of people by now know that soda is not good for them, right? So it's like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Mountain Dew, all of those different brands, anything like that with the high sugar, but even the caffeine as well. I mean, that's kind of the double whammy when you get caffeine and sugar. But what a lot of people don't know are these so-called health drinks or energy drinks or even fruit juice that contains all of this sugar. Because when you're getting that sugar, it's unabated, which means that there's no fiber to slow it down. There's no enzyme. So what happens is, and again, these are fantastic studies, but a lot of health experts you might be hearing from right now, they're not giving you the full story. So they're saying fruit is bad for you, but they're only looking at it from a total sugar perspective. They simply don't understand. I'm going to do a whole show on this in the future. But this is the amazing research. When there was a glucose-based drink, so just basically a sugar-based drink, and participants in the study drank that, their blood sugar increased. But when they mixed whole fruit, basically a pureed fruit to it, blood sugar levels actually went down. So they added more sugar from the fruit, but now it was abated by some of the natural fruit. So, I mean, again, we have to just understand the science, the research. Fruit isn't going to cause that big of an issue in people who are, especially right now, are not so susceptible to it. So, personally, when I work with someone with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, what I'm doing is I'm gauging their reaction initially. I'm helping them create stronger, more adaptable, more flexible cell membranes over a period of 90 to 120 days so that their actual glucose receptors are more willing to actually uptake the sugar from their blood. And that just takes some time if you have type 2, type 1 diabetes. For your average person who doesn't have one of those diseases of the body, this is not an issue. But remember, all of your beverages should not have sugar in them. And that includes fruit juice. Really, even if you're doing a juice, a fresh pressed juice, it should be fresh pressed vegetables. Now, there will be a little bit of sugar. That's totally fine coming from fresh pressed juice. That includes carrots, beets, that's okay. But I'm talking about buying orange juice for your kids, buying apple juice for your kids. Unless you're just using a little bit of juice and water, it's just simply not acceptable, okay? Number 4 is sleeping too much or too little. Okay, not enough sleep we know really taxes the adrenals because it throws off your circadian rhythm. So your body can be overproducing cortisol or underproducing cortisol, and also it's not giving you enough time to regenerate, to rebuild, to calm down the body, which also produces more serotonin, which is the happy, feel-good neurotransmitter. Now, if we are sleeping, that's if we're sleeping too little. Now, if we're sleeping too much, what can happen is we actually miss our initial cortisol spike in the morning as part of our natural diurnal rhythm, which means cortisol is high in the morning and then gradually declines with the day. That's what's supposed to happen with natural sunlight. So we might miss that, and that can actually lead to a little lower levels of dopamine, a little lower levels of mood, which can also lead to depression. Now, there are other factors that go into this as well. There's no doubt about it as well. But simply put, we don't want to sleep too much. We don't want to sleep too little. Well, how much is too much and how little is too little? It really depends on the person. But most people need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, really not less than 7. I know people can get away with 4, 5, or 6, but that's certainly not adequate. Meaning like they're just getting enough to get by, and maybe it hasn't caught up with them yet, but it will. And more than 9, well, if you're, let's say you're past the age of 25, 7 to 9 is typically plenty. Maybe you need more for a shortened period of time because your body's really run down, but not on an ongoing basis. Now, if you're in college, you probably need more. If you're a child, teenager, you need more. And that's because your body is in more of an anabolic growth phase, and it does the majority of that anabolic-based work at night when you're sleeping, when you're resting. Okay, so what is up next? Now, the next one, number 5, goes with number 3, and that's not drinking enough water. So yes, how do you get rid of the soda? How do you get rid of the fruit juice? More water, squeeze fresh lemon, or what I do is I love lime. So I squeeze fresh lime in water and a pinch of sea salt. That pinch of sea salt gives me the sodium that I need, and it also the trace minerals from the Himalayan sea salt. That's the pink salt. Just make sure it's not produced in China. Seriously, make sure that it's true Himalayan sea salt. You can also get real salt. It's made in Utah from the salt beds. That's okay as well. And Celtic salt is fine too. Celtic salt is just very, very strong. It comes from the sea as well. The sea is becoming quite polluted, so I'm not sure that is the best anymore. Okay, so, and then I squeeze lime in, and lime has a lot of potassium, just like lemon, and so that's a great balance. That's what I call my natural Gatorade. Certainly how I like to start the day, but that's my between meal drink. Really enjoy it, and it gives me a nice little pick-me-up. Okay, so you need lots of water. Lots and lots of water. How much water? Well, I've done a previous Cabral concept on this as well, but typically it's about half your body weight in pounds, so how much you weigh in pounds, divide that by half. So let's just give you an example. 160 pounds divided by 2, take half of that, so you have 80 pounds basically. And that 80 pounds is just converted over to ounces. So now we need 80 ounces of water. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you need 100 ounces of water. If you weigh 160 pounds, you need 80 ounces of water. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And 80 ounces of water is 10 glasses of water per day. So again, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's a good place to start. Remember, you can't drink too much water if you're always adding minerals to it. But how much is too much water? Again, look at your urine output. If you're urinating and it's completely clear, well, you don't need any much more water. You're at your capacity. That's good. And if your urine is a darker yellow color, that means you need more water intake. Now, one more thing about that as well. If you're taking a B vitamin or an all-in-one, you will typically have a little yellow tinge to the urine because of the B vitamin excretion. Okay, next up is number 6, missing one of your macros. So important. Right now, we have diets that are very high in protein. We have diets that are very high in fat. We have diets that are typically really low or devoid of carbohydrates. So it's any one of those things. But what happens is you can do that in the short term, no problem. 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. But after a while, your body is smart. It is smart. It will keep up in the beginning, but then it will tell you after a while, you'll become more moody. You'll become lower blood sugar. You won't be able to regulate your blood sugar as well. Your hormones will be off. Your thyroid will start to go hypothyroid. And that's not a good thing in terms of metabolism. You'll start to gain weight, or you won't be able to lose weight as easily. Your mood, like I said, will be decreased. You'll be more anxious because your body is missing a protein, carb, or fat. It's supposed to get all 3. I mean, legitimately, those are the 3 things that your body needs. It can do without really, I would say, any one of them except protein. I mean, we need protein in some form or another to keep rebuilding tissues. Proteins also work as enzymes. But, why draw straws? Your body needs all of them. It needs carbs, it needs protein, it needs fat, and you can't eliminate one for too long or you will suffer the consequences. So make sure you have all 3 of those. And again, for a 21-day period, you can certainly go lower in carbs. For a 21-day period, you can go higher in fat. However you want to look at it, but not for a long-term nutrition plan. Okay, number 7, things that can make you sick, fat, and depressed. This is really important because this is a few of the hidden ones we're going to get into now. Eating foods that you're sensitive to. All right, so I lab test a lot of people using a food sensitivity test. I lab test basically infants, babies that are 6 months old, 2-year-olds who have eczema, psoriasis, learning disabilities, whatever it might be, whatever we're labeling, right? Whatever we're putting the mark on. And then, of course, hundreds and hundreds of adults. So what we're looking at are people are eating things like eggs or egg whites. And they don't even know that they're sensitive to them. So every time they eat them, there's an inflammatory-based reaction. So there could be an IgE reaction, which is immediate, but most people don't feel the immediate reaction. What we're testing for is the IgG reaction. Now, that's a latent, delayed reaction that happens somewhere 24 to 48 hours plus after the food's eaten. So what it means is a day later, you're a little moody. A day later, you have a little less energy. A day later, you feel bloated or you're just holding more water. That's that IgG food sensitivity. Again, a lot of people say, well, I don't know if it worked, but this is the same test that they're using right now at the best hospitals in the world. I mean, functional medicine, conventional medicine, every type of medicine knows this to be true. There's great studies right down the street from me at Tufts University. Amazing studies at the Center of Health down there. So this is a great test. If you haven't run your food sensitivities yet, highly recommend it. It is 94 healthy foods that we test for. It's about half a dozen meat, half a dozen fish, about a dozen vegetables, dozen fruit, half a dozen nuts or so, about half a dozen grains, half a dozen different types of dairy. Absolutely fantastic. And then it has a little candida titer, a little candida test to look if your body has been really attacking or going after candida in your system as well. I'll link everything up in the show notes today. Simply go to stephencabral.com/558. And as always, if you're listening to back podcasts, which I highly recommend, you go back to previous podcasts, just go to stephencabral.com/podcast. That's where every podcast I've ever done is. All right, so that's a big one because that inflammation, right? That's a root cause. And inflammation from foods that you're sensitive to, even if they're healthy foods, right? Even if they're healthy foods like cranberries, or blueberries that you can be sensitive to, cause inflammation, leads to mood-based disorders, leads to weight gain because of water retention from the inflammation, and it leads to sickness, of course, because of gut-based issues that can affect autoimmune issues that can affect anything else in your body. All right, next up, really important as well, is not optimizing your hormones. Okay, there are so many women walking around right now that are estrogen dominant. And I've talked about this so many times before, but it's so important. It seems like literally 60 to 70% of the women that I test or more are estrogen dominant. How do you find out if you're estrogen dominant? Well, you can look at your symptoms. You can say, yes, I do get a little bit more moody. I do get some bloating. I do get some acne. I get some water retention. I get, I feel different about 5 days to 7 days before day one of menstruation. And if that sounds like you, well, your estrogen levels may not even be too high, but what happens is your progesterone has gone lower. Again, I've done podcasts on that as well. You can just type in estrogen dominance and you'll be able to find that out as well. Now, how do you test your own levels? Through saliva, right? Through saliva. The food sensitivity test, you just poke your finger, little blood test, easy. The hormone test is just 4 tubes of saliva. You look at your adrenal gland function, you look at your hormones. Super simple. You do it about 5 to 7 days before you get your period. If you're on birth control right now and you don't have a specific period, you would just do it any day, like whenever you feel that symptoms, that would be the day that you do your test, or the day after. That would be totally fine as well. For perimenopausal or menopausal or postmenopausal, you can really do it, again, symptoms day, or you can simply do it any day that you would like to get your hormone levels. Okay, so number 9 is not, and again, I will link that up in today's show notes, not fasting for 12 hours overnight. This is number 9. Super important. Why is this important? Because you have to understand that there's a balance in everything in life. And that means if you don't take some downtime for your body, and that includes digestion, which is about 30% of all the energy in your body, then you're just constantly exhausting your systems. Your body always has to be producing all the stomach acid and enzymes from your pancreas as well, and bile from your liver and gallbladder, and then the peristaltic wave in the intestines, and the bacteria. So you have to give your body a rest. If you don't, it doesn't ever have time to shut down, clean house, rebuild, regenerate, and then it can do it again the next day. So what I say is go 7 to 7 at night. Stop eating dinner by 7, go till 7 the next morning, okay? Or stop eating dinner by 8, go to 8, right? You can get the picture. 12 hours overnight, one of the absolute greatest benefits and gifts you can give your body. And I spoke about this yesterday. I spoke about this on episode 557, just yesterday. If you want to tune in more to how intermittent fasting, this is 12 hours overnight, can really, legitimately regenerate your immune system. Amazing. And number 10, last but certainly not least, is not measuring your results. Tomorrow's entire podcast talks about how to measure your results for better results, how to measure them. So today, though, what I want to say is a lot of people aren't well, they're overweight, and they are depressed, or they are anxious, or they are suffering from some type of low mood-based disorder, or just ups and downs. And one of the reasons they're kind of stuck in this cycle is because they're not measuring what works, meaning like they're trying a lot of different things, but they've never actually written it down to measure it. And until you actually keep a journal, until you measure a little bit, until you do something where all the variables are controlled, it's hard to figure out what will really work for your body. And I want to go in depth with that point tomorrow, but I at least want to put that in your ear to make you think that there are ways that you can be improving right now for anything, right? When I talk about measuring results, I'm talking about it in terms of wellness today. But if we're talking like a Mindset Motivation Monday show, we're talking about measuring results in terms of spirituality, relationships, work, finances, career, life goals. Any one of those things you have to measure. If you're not measuring, how do you even really know if you're achieving anything at all? Like, what is your goal? You have to measure those specific things, and then you measure your actions that you're taking towards any one of those goals. And that goes for anything. If we're talking about getting well, if we're talking about losing weight, if we're talking about becoming happier, well, we have to set a goal, and we need to follow some type of program. And as we're following that program, that's when we start to measure those results. So hopefully today's show gave you some insight. Please do feel free to pass this show on to anyone you believe it could help. And as always, I'm going to be back every single day answering your questions. A lot of these topics come directly from your questions. And on the weekends, I'll be going right into our community questions as well. So as always, thank you again for tuning into the Cabral Concept. I appreciate each and every one of your listens. Thank you for just tuning into the Cabral Concept. It's hard to believe, but it's already the month of August. This means that the summer will soon be over and we'll be getting back into our fall routine, which for the most of us means cleaning up our nutrition and getting back into a healthy regimen. This is why during the month of August 2017, I want to offer you a free bottle of my daily probiotic support with any 21-day Dr. Cabral Detox package. This means you'll get all the wellness benefits associated by doing the Dr. Cabral Detox, and if you're looking to lose weight, you can lose up to 15 pounds in just 21 days. Plus, I'm going to send you out the 60-capsule bottle of my dairy-free, low-histamine 50 billion CFU daily probiotic support. This is the exact same one I use every day as part of my Dr. Cabral daily protocol. I feel so strongly that the 21-day Dr. Cabral Detox is the first place most people should start, that I'm offering $30 off the retail price and another $39.95 in savings with the daily probiotic support bonus offer. This is an almost $70 in savings for the highest quality, non-GMO, third-party tested functional medicine nutritional supplements on the market. To take advantage of this limited time offer, simply go to stephencabral.com/store for details.